Now we move further back in time. 1,500 years ago, Shivta, Nitzana, and Chalutza, three cities located in southern Israel, were prosperous economic and cultural hubs. But during the 9th century, they were abandoned. I-24 News correspondent Uri Shapira joined up with a group of archaeologists, which is trying to find out what went wrong.
One man's trash is another's treasure. This old saying may perfectly describe the excavation taking place these days at the ancient site of Shivta in southern Israel.
Garbage is excellent for looking at the way of life during the time period. So it actually tells us a lot about food, about what they use on a daily basis, and it's really quite interesting.
A team led by archaeologist Professor Guy Bar-Oz from Haifa University are picking through 1,500-year-old junk from the Byzantine era in order to find an answer to one of the greatest mysteries in the history of the region. What happened to three ancient cities located in the middle of the desert, Shivta, Chalutza, and Nitzana? All of them were commercially and culturally successful during the Byzantine and early Muslim periods, with thousands of residents, trade routes, and production of goods. But something went wrong along the way. During the 9th century, these societies declined and remained deserted for more than 1,000 years. Professor Bar-Oz and his team are trying to find out why.
There's three main hypotheses if I'm serving the literature. One, that the collapse is connected to climatic fluctuation, that at a certain time the area became drier. Another is the cultural turnover, the Muslim conquest and the early Arab period that pushed away the Christian Byzantine. And the third is kind of diseases that caused the disaster for the population.
An interesting find shows an ancient church located side by side with a mosque. Evidence perhaps that the Muslim conquest of the area in the 7th century was not as destructive event as experienced elsewhere. Possible coexistence between Muslims and Christians? Dr. Yotam Tepper, manager of the excavations, thinks otherwise.
There are crosses that lie in the entrance of the mosque. They were placed there ostentatiously by the Muslims because the Muslims who used to enter the mosque stepped on crosses, so it doesn't necessarily point to coexistence.
This 5-year project is partially funded by the European Union. A study that combines biology, archaeology, and the new trendy field, sustainability. The researchers hope their finding may shed light on ecological and economic systems and their ability to survive. The answers to this quest just may be found in a pile of ancient trash.
Yes, and back in the present, I'm joined by I-24 News correspondent Uri Shapira and the author of this report. Good evening, Uri.
Good evening, Ayman.
Uri, this project, as you mentioned in your story, is financed by the European Union. Can you tell us more about the significance of this project that, in some respects, explores a culture that has failed?
Yes, of course. First of all, you have to understand that this is a very unique study, first of all, because it combines different fields, biology, genetics, of course, archaeology, and I think the main key is sustainability, which is a new trendy field which tries to focus on ecological balance and survival. And this is a very interesting case study of something that failed, something that didn't work. And also, many studies focus on the decline of an empire or something like that. This one focuses on the decline of an area or a city. It's something that we can learn from.
And as you say that, I'm thinking that even these days, the topic of a city in decline is something we've discussed recently that's happening in our time too.
Yeah, well, if you talk about a city in decline, so one example that comes to my mind is the city of Detroit and the state of Michigan. In the 1930s, there were 1.5 million people living in Detroit. Now there are about half of that. And there are several reasons for that. First of all, socioeconomic reasons. The General Motors was the main attraction of the town, and in the 1980s they closed the factories there, so many people left the city. Of course, there are health issues. We saw last week the city of Flint with the major water crisis there, also crime and violence. So there are many reasons to see the decline of the city. Perhaps in 100 years from now, we can see studies about the disappearance of Detroit. I don't know.
Sounds like a very, very grim prospect. But Uri Shapira, thank you very much for bringing us this beautiful story tonight.
Thank you very much.